All right, good morning. This is the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. It is Wednesday, October 22nd at 9 a.m. This is our weekly business agenda. We will start with a roll call.
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath,
Here.
Commissioner Ray,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 6 commissioners present.
Great. Good to see everyone. That is a quorum. We are officially open for business. We will look at our agenda and proceed accordingly. First is any commissioner comments to ourselves and or our stakeholders. Seeing none, we move to public comment. We have two folks that signed up for general public comment. The first is Christine Dayton, and the second is Ann Hussein. If we could elevate either or both, that would be great. Each will have 3 minutes to speak to us, relevant to matters that are not on our agenda.
Mr. Chair, we were able to elevate Christine Dayton. We're still looking for Ann Hussein. Ms. Hussein, if you're in the audience. Oh, I see someone was elevated. Excuse me.
All right, Christine Dayton, you're recognized. Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you so much for your time today and for this opportunity to speak. My name is Christine Dayton, and I am a homeowner in Aurora, Colorado. Um, I'm new to this community. I just moved here about 3 months ago, and my family relocated from South Carolina. When we moved here, we chose this neighborhood because it felt safe and welcoming and like a great place to honestly raise our children. What I didn't know at that time was that oil and gas wells were being planned so close to my home and the schools that my children attend. I learned about that after we made the purchase of our home, and I was frankly devastated to hear about that. I was very concerned for their health and well-being, as well as mine and my husband's. I'm speaking to you today not as an expert of any sort, but just as a mom. I'm someone who has children in these local schools and who lives here and wants to create a healthy and safe place for them to grow up. I also recently faced a health scare that, quite frankly, made me very concerned about increased cancer risks that we all know exist because of these wells being present. The research is out there. You all have seen it. I'm quite sure of that. I've seen it as well. And people who live near fracking sites are at higher risk of respiratory issues, birth defects, cancer. The air quality suffers, our property value suffers. There's just nothing that I can think of that is positive about this situation. So basically, why I'm here to speak to you today is just to ask you to please take this mandate to prioritize our health seriously. SB 19181 clearly gives that to you. And I would say that as commissioners, it's your requirement to do that and to place us above the interests of these gas and oil companies. The financial benefits that we might see as a community can't possibly overstep or oversee these very serious consequences that we will face that are irreversible. We can't change this once the wells are in place. So again, I ask you to just please take that seriously and protect us, protect our homes, protect our children, protect our future. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Dayton, for being with us and for taking time out of your day to speak to us. Being new to our state, I can let you know that we do take the mandate from SB 19181 seriously. We have the most rigorous and protective rules and regulations in the state, thus the nation, thus the world. So we try to do our job to make sure that if new oil and gas is approved, it is protective. So thank you for being with us and welcome to our state. Ms. Hussein, you are now recognized.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ann Hussein. I live in Southeast Aurora in Arapahoe County. I am one of thousands of residents who will be severely impacted by the Lowry Ranch CAB projects. I'm here today to make sure this commission understands exactly what families like mine will be forced to endure if every well pad in this project is approved. I don't need to repeat the long list of health, safety, and quality of life harms caused by residential fracking. You've heard them, you've read the public comments. What I'm here today to ask is this: what happened to Commissioner Oath's public promise made months ago to create a public health risk panel to evaluate the dangers to our communities? Has this panel been created? If so, who are the medical and public health experts on the panel? Is the commission allowing oil and gas operators to provide them experts? What is their review process, their methodology, and their timeline? Will the commission make a formal public statement and answer these questions before you begin this panel? Most importantly, will this commission continue to approve residential well pads before that panel concludes and decide whether these projects are safe for our children and our families? Our community deserves full transparency about this panel. Let me tell you why this matters to me so deeply. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, about a mile from one of the largest steel mills in the United States. My husband is a gastroenterologist and I'm a GI nurse. We practiced in an outpatient endoscopy clinic in nearby suburbs. One day he came home and he said, "My God, Ann, I've diagnosed so many patients with pancreatic cancer. Someone needs to do a study on zip code 60617. And he was right. The cancer rate in that zip code was far above the national average. So here's the thing. We don't know the damage environmental toxins can do to our bodies until many years later. We do not want to be saying the same thing in 30 years from now. My God, someone should do a study on children who grew up in the 80016 zip code because of a cancer diagnosis. I don't want us 30 years from now to be saying someone needs to do a study on all the children who grew up near the Lowry Ranch wells. We didn't see it coming, not then. The damage was silent, it was invisible, and it took 30 years before the pattern became undeniable. Thank you for your time.
Commissioner Oath?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to provide a brief response. Thanks, Ms. Hussein, for your comments. And so with respect to your questions about the process and the panel that we're convening to review the recent public health studies, I want to assure you that that is underway. The panel has been meeting, will continue to meet and meet with the authors of those studies to better understand them. I did commit to and still very much fully intend to provide a summary of those discussions and kind of the overall findings of the panel about the studies that will be made public. I expect that to be available in the months to come. And so certainly we'll make sure that that is available to all who are interested. So I just wanted to let you know that that is underway. Thanks again for your comments and being here today.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Oath. And I realize this is not a question and answer session, but the questions that I asked in my comment, can I email them to you for answers?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk with you offline about any questions you have.
All right. Thank you very much.
Of course.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Hussein, for being with us this morning. That concludes public comment. That's all the folks that signed up. We now move down our agenda to the consent agenda. Does anyone have questions relative to the issues on consent agenda? Seeing none, I would move approval of the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Ms. Amara, we can take down the screen thingy because we're going to move into a presentation. All right, next up is a Colorado Parks and Wildlife presentation, the Northeast Region Mitigation Fund update.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Mark Leslie, Northeast
morning.
Region Manager for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. How's everybody doing this morning?
Real good.
Glad you can hear me. Sorry about the halo behind me here. So, well, we're excited to be here. We've got some of our folks in the Northeast Region team. Wanted to talk to you about Senate Bill 181 and a recent habitat acquisition of fee title in Weld County, the Eagle Butte State Wildlife Area. And, I know this is the first one of these that we've done statewide using Senate Bill 181 funds. And I want to reiterate that we so much appreciate the partnership with the ECMC and the industry. And we're trying to be diligent about putting those dollars on the ground. And I have We're here because I asked my team to put together a presentation to let you know, just to update you where we're at. And with that, I have Deputy Regional Manager Shannon Schaller here to provide a slideshow for you. And we have Andrew Newman, who's our Energy and Land Use Supervisor in the region. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Shannon. We'll take questions at the end of the presentation.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for the introduction, and to you, Chair Robbins and Commissioners, for having us here today. My name is Shannon Schaller, Northeast Region Deputy Regional Manager for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And as Mark said, we are excited to give you an update on some mitigation dollar projects that we've had in the Northeast region and our most recent project. And we do have a presentation to share with you, and I'm going to ask my colleague Andrew Newman to share that presentation. Great. Looks like he's getting up and running there. So with that, I'll start out with a background on the Northeast Region Compensatory Mitigation Fund program. Our main goal is to plan and execute habitat work to mitigate indirect and direct oil and gas developments in the Northeast region. And we have a mitigation plan that outlines priorities for mitigation spending. Our regional team consists of biologists, district wildlife managers, land use and energy staff, and our biologists consist of terrestrial biologists, aquatic biologists, and habitat biologists. So we have a team of people that have been meeting monthly since 2021 to talk about the different priorities and decision-making related to spending mitigation dollars in the Northeast region. One of the goals that we have is that of the money that we receive, we try to spend about 50% on habitat improvement projects, which would be similar to like a shovel-ready project, and 50% on habitat conservation, whether that's an easement or a fee title project. Some of the plans that we use to help guide priorities for how we will spend mitigation dollars are using CPW's statewide habitat connectivity plan. And that is a plan that's been vetted through the state that identifies critical habitats for wildlife and priorities for spending. And then also we use CPW's high priority habitat maps for project identification. And so, like I said, this team's meeting monthly to talk about how to best spend mitigation dollars to deliver projects. And a lot of it is through regional prioritization of projects and ground level identification of projects, but then also we have high level direction to ensure that we have transparency and consistency of how we are delivering these mitigation dollars. And I want to take a moment to just give a big kudos out to Brandon Moret, our energy liaison in the Northeast region. He has been the driver and crafter beyond around getting this group together monthly and also developing our plan. Next slide, please. So how have we spent the money that the Northeast region has received? Well, to back up, I guess, a little bit, I'll say that to date, CPW in the Northeast region has received almost exactly $4 million since 2023, and the bulk of that money has been received in 2024 and 2025. And we're happy to report that we have spent $1.1 million on several different projects in the region. And the first project that I'm going to talk about is cheatgrass treatments on state wildlife areas. So in 2023, CPW contracted to aerial spray cheatgrass on state wildlife areas. And the point of that is to help our native plants to grow by getting rid of a non-native, increase grass and forage and cover for mule deer and other species. So it's been a great project for us to improve what we have on projects already. And we spent about $43,000 on treating several different state wildlife areas and had really good success for improving habitat on those. We also partnered with Chevron and other CPW sections for a big game radio collar project in the Northeast region using mitigation dollars. We spent about $43,000 of mitigation dollars to put radio collars on pronghorn and mule deer in the Northeast region. And the intent behind that was to help identify landscape level habitat use by both mule deer and pronghorn to assist with understanding seasonal movements of those species directly related to wildlife habitat utilization to help inform HPH layers. So getting more data to help us do better in the world of understanding habitat and animal use. CPW in the Northeast region also supported a mule deer habitat mitigation bank. And so with that, we were able to work on mule deer habitat where we could restore, rehabilitate, and protect about 40 acres. And then those 40 acres could be used as a bank for an oil and gas company as they worked through their different mitigation efforts. Next slide, please. And so the most recent project that we are extremely proud of is a fee title acquisition in Weld County. And it's the first fee title acquisition with mitigation dollars, and really the driver of why we're here today. We most recently completed this project and really excited about this project being included in our mitigation report. And I'm going to now turn it over to Andrew Newman to give you the highlights of why we think this is such a great project, and we're excited to talk to you about it today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. I appreciate it. Thank you, commissioners, for the time today to present on the progress here for our program. As Shannon and Mark mentioned, we recently acquired this Eagle Butte mitigation property to offset some of the impacts of recent oil and gas activity in the DJ Basin. The Eagle Butte property is located in northeastern Weld County, consists of approximately 632 deeded acres. It is located in Mule Deer DAUs D5 and Pronghorn PH1. The land currently is land use at the site has been recently been livestock grazing and some limited hunting opportunities with the previous owner. There is no current or existing oil and gas infrastructure on the property itself, but there is existing production facilities in the area of the property. The property has several high-value wildlife habitats associated with it. I'll speak to those in just a second. But one of the criteria that we look for when we're looking at different properties and opportunities for conservation, either easements or fee title acquisitions, is connectivity to other already conserved lands, and those could be through easements or public lands, Forest Service or BLM lands, other state lands as well. So looking here closely in the neighborhood of where this parcel is that you can see outlined in green, there is good already conserved lands in proximity. Several Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust easements are existing and currently in the area. If we zoom out just a little bit here on the next screen, it'll show more of the landscape view of other conserved lands. There are state trust lands in the neighborhood, and also in the areas the Pawnee National Grasslands that are also conserved currently as well. So we like this parcel. It provides another piece of connectivity for wildlife to move across the landscape in perpetuity. Also, one of the main criteria we use to identify properties and opportunities are the high priority habitats on a certain location. This location checks several boxes for multiple species for our high priority habitats. The entire property is mapped for mule deer severe winter range HPH and winter concentration area HPH. There is also pronghorn winter concentration area bracketing the area, and there's a high value pronghorn habitat surrounding and on the location. There are multiple plain sharp-tailed grouse leks on the property or in proximity. It's not uncommon to be driving along the county roads early in the morning in the spring to hear sharp-tailed grouse drumming as they're lekking. And then most significantly on this parcel is an active golden eagle nest and territory. In the Butte area on the east side of the property, there's an active nest that has been productive over the last few years. Just in the last couple of years, there's been multiple young eagles fledged from this nest. And so it's really a high value wildlife habitat parcel, and which is one of the reasons we were so excited about being able to acquire it. Next steps for the wildlife area is to develop a management plan. And so we have a working group of area and regional staff working on a draft management plan currently. And the priority for management for this property is going to be different than other state wildlife areas in that the priority is wildlife habitat and conservation of that. It's not going to have, open public access. There will be, maybe limited future public access, always with CPW staff involved or present. There will be no parking lots or other recreational facilities developed on the property. And that's because of, we want to really, preserve that habitat, minimize human interaction and disturbance on the parcel. And there's also the seasonal closure as a result of the golden eagle nest. That nest has been active, as I mentioned, for multiple years in a row, and the north surface occupancy buffers do incorporate most of the property. So the idea is to set aside this property mainly for wildlife habitat. The draft management plan is in progress right now. We're working on through that, and we hope to have a draft sometime early in 2026. And we will also promulgate regulations through our formal regulations process in late 2026, where we will formalize the rules and regulations for the property. We might see some limited hunting opportunities on the property, possibly for youth hunts or disabled hunting opportunities. We will conduct habitat monitoring annually on the property, and we will also decide on what level of signage and regulations to go along with it. But again, with the priority of setting aside this habitat for wildlife itself. Those are the highlights of the project or the property, and I think we are ready to take questions if anyone has questions.
Thank you very much to the panel for being with us this morning and presenting. It's always helpful for the commission and the folks that listen in to understand how the mitigation dollars are being utilized. So really appreciate that. Do we have questions for the panel? Commissioner Ackerman.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the members of CPW for being here. I know that lots of hours of work have gone into this, and appreciate CPW's time and dedication to working together with us as we in tandem as the state of Colorado are working to not only minimize the impacts of oil and gas development, but also to maximize the opportunities for long-term proliferation of wildlife. And the Northeast region has made a lot of efforts there, and really appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you for your comments, Mr. Newman, about that this state wildlife area is a little bit different than other state wildlife areas. Obviously, all state wildlife areas are managed for habitat, but you mentioned that this one will be managed primarily for habitat with really very little other types of use. I know that that's probably going to put a little pressure on CPW, and appreciate you doing that, as these dollars are oil and gas dollars intended for this youth, and for this use, and it really does comply with the intended mission of Senate Bill 181, that these are actually mitigative dollars going to mitigative use to enhance and protect high priority habitat for the species in question and the area in question. So thank you for your work. I know that these processes, these acquisitions, especially in the state, take a lot of time, a lot of effort. There's a lot of entities, including the legislature, that you have to talk to. Has it received final approval? Is it, has the deed been transferred already? What's the ongoing process or the timeline there, if not?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ackerman, for the question. Yes, I believe that the process is complete. The transaction did close earlier this month, and the deed has been transferred, and CPW is in control of the property. And as I mentioned, we are working on a draft management plan and kind of inventorying the livestock infrastructure that's out there and trying to make some decisions on what we'll be doing with property moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that. A couple more questions. You mentioned the Mule Deer Habitat Mitigation Bank. I think most of us are familiar to some degree with mitigation banks. Can you just take a moment to explain functionally how that might work in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for that. Mitigation banks work just basically at a high level. A private entity will set aside acreage of high value habitat for a certain species, and then put that in a long-term conservation easement or some other kind of vehicle that will ensure conservation in perpetuity for that parcel. And oftentimes, operators will come to us. Well, not often, but sometimes operators will come to us with a property that they have an idea that would work well as a mitigation bank. The one that we referenced in our presentation is located along the confluence of the South Platte River and the Poudre River, I believe, in Weld County. And it's a property that has a high value, high priority habitat for mule deer and other species. And so it's set aside in conservation state, and then the operator can offset their future impacts from other oil and gas drilling plans, kind of in an incremental basis. So, for an example, they may have a project that needs to offset 5 acres. So we'll use 5 of those acres to offset that project, and then they have 35 remaining to offset future projects. Very similar to wetland mitigation banking that folks may be familiar with as well.
Thank you very much. So conceptually, almost kind of reverse of what we've done with the fee title acquisition here, where there were impacts, and now we're protecting against those impacts or mitigating for those impacts, as opposed to kind of the protection took place first, and you can draw upon that protection in the future.
Certainly, yeah, that's a correct characterization.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And thank you for going through, Ms. Schaller, your kind of priorities and the team and how they work there at CPW. That certainly implies that there's a kind of a pipeline of upcoming projects as well, and an ongoing effort to utilize these dollars. You mentioned 1.1 million spent so far, of the 4 million taken in, most of that in 24 and 25. What kind of a lag time turnaround generally do you expect? And can you give us an idea of other projects that you currently have in the hopper?
Thanks, Commissioner Ackerman. The question on timeline and what projects we have. And it does take a little bit of time to put that money on the ground, especially when you're talking about something like a fee title acquisition. And to be honest, from the start of a project identification and running it through all of the approvals in the agency, which include our leadership team and our real estate section, and then running it through the legislature, about 10 months to a year is really what it takes to be able to secure a property in perpetuity. And that applied to this particular property. So it does take some time. The good news is we do have a running list of some projects that we have our eye on and some other properties. And currently we are working on a couple of properties very similar to the Eagle Butte property that we talked about, in using mitigation dollars to secure habitat in a fee title way with CPW in areas that will mitigate impacts from oil and gas, and a few that we're excited about. Also, we look for partners to help us with funding, and as we all know, that it does take quite a bit of money sometimes to secure property, and so the ability to leverage mitigation funds with other partners is something that we're looking into. But we do have an ongoing list of projects, and we're currently working on several projects very similar to what we just talked about, and excited to hopefully get to tell you about those over the course of the next year.
Thank you so much. And one follow-up question for you, Deputy Regional Manager, that it does take operational dollars to manage these properties in the long term as CPW acquires them. Can you talk about how you fund the operations of these properties? And also a bit of a disjointed question. Do you work with neighboring landowners as you look for these types of properties? You mentioned that you look for habitat, kind of comparable habitat and symbiotic situations. Certainly the purchase of land by the state, large landowners kind of have their eye on that. Just wondering kind of what you go through to talk to neighboring landowners and others in the community.
Thanks, Commissioner. As far as operational dollars, yes, that is something that we consider. And as we identify a project, that is something that is considered, right? We need to look at the administrative and the maintenance responsibilities from the state to ensure that it stays quality habitat. So does that take a whole nother staff member, a whole nother position? Or is that something that those administrative duties can be covered by current staffing? So that's something that factors into our prioritization. And then additionally, what are the dollars? Do we have the money to ensure that we have appropriate fencing, that we're spraying for weeds, and that we are taking care of that property. And just this morning, Andrew and I were talking about the management plan for this property and ensuring that we use mitigation dollars to take care of the fencing. And so I don't know that we have it completely figured out, but it is a critical piece in us managing property well and ensuring that it stays for habitat, and a consideration for us as we identify projects, right? You know, we don't have the ability to just add staff, but could we contract a person, a seasonal person, to help us with those properties? So we're hoping to identify that more permanently on this, but it is something that is considered. And then as far as the neighboring properties go, that's also something that we rely on field staff for helping us with those relationships, because as a potential neighbor to other landowners, we want to ensure that our proposition for acquisition is supported by them as neighbors. That's important to legislators to know, that when we go and ask for the ability to spend this money, are we supported by our local landowners? Have we done the homework to talk to those neighboring landowners? Is protecting this for habitat in line and supported with others? And so we rely heavily on our local staff for those relationships and those support letters. And where we hit bumps, are we doing the right outreach to ensure that we articulate and we're transparent about what the intentions of these projects are? And in this project particularly, we don't expect to change anything from how it's been managed by these private property owners for years, right? We're going to keep it very similar to intact habitat along other intact habitat. And that also, I think, helps get us support for these projects.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions, Mr. Chair. I'm grateful for the team being here today. Look forward to hearing from you, hopefully at the end of the year when we do the report for year end, and appreciate Mr. Leslie and your team for being here. Thank you.
Commissioner Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this presentation. I definitely found it helpful to see some of the projects of where this is going. And I know Commissioner Ackerman has talked about in his former life some of the difficulties in making sure you get these finalized and the land deals and everything done. So I appreciate all the hard work done with that as well. I kind of wanted to build off a little bit of the last part of your answer there. I've had some industry reps reach out to me in hopes of getting some ideas of operator-led projects. And as you talked about some of the difficulties, not just with funding, staffing, et cetera, things like that, are there ideas for operator-led projects that could be helpful with some of what you're seeing, or do you have other ideas for operator-led projects that could also kind of beyond just conservation easements that could be helpful as well?
Thanks, Commissioner Cross. We do have ideas, and you're right. We have multitude of options for operators to offset and mitigate impacts, and one of those which could be they come to us with a project. And Brandon Moret and our Northeast Region mitigation team has a list of categories of projects, and a lot of those projects that you spoke to about, could an operator initiate, let's say, potentially a conservation easement or some other protection of property. We are constantly pinging staff to make sure we have lists. So while we're trying to identify areas where we may want to initiate a project, we also put those same projects on the list. And so when an operator reaches out and asks for ideas, Brandon and Andrew's team are providing those project opportunities to them. And sometimes I think it's a balance of what's most easy for them to move through. But yes, we do provide those project identification through Andrew's team. And Andrew, please feel free to contribute if I missed anything.
I think you covered it pretty well, Shannon. I just will add that, yes, we always look forward to hearing from operators with their ideas for projects. We're happy to be involved in those. We also have other outreach efforts ongoing with through channels to reach private landowners in the region who do maintain high quality habitat or high priority habitat on their lands. And so we're working with other local entities like conservation districts and local municipalities, trying to get in front of the local landowners to identify opportunities, everything from habitat improvement and enhancement projects to conservation easements or potentially fee title acquisitions. I think as Shannon mentioned previously, we try and balance our project portfolio, 50% habitat projects and 50% long-term conservation. With this purchase, we are a little farther ahead on long-term conservation of acres. We're still looking to try and get more habitat projects into the ground, and I think that we're going to have some good results to share probably in the next 12 to 24 months, whereas we're making progress getting those dollars into habitat enhancement projects.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions or comments, Commissioner Messner?
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Super exciting projects, and really appreciate you taking the time to go over how the mitigation dollars are being utilized and the different projects that you've done or are contemplating doing, and really, really appreciate the update. And my question may be more appropriate for kind of the end of year evaluation, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of the evaluation that's done after projects are completed, and as you look at future projects in the pipeline to determine whether or not the funding, the mitigation funds that are being collected and the projects that are being developed are in fact offsetting the impacts associated with that new development. Um, this was a big discussion during the development of the mitigation fund strategy during the mission change rulemaking, and I'm always been a little curious how we evaluate whether we're successful with offsetting those impacts or not with the utilization of the mitigation dollars.
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner. Thank you for that. Yeah, we do conduct several things to evaluate whether we are successful in implementing these projects. We're tracking acres. So we look at acres to acres, acres impacted directly, also indirectly from oil and gas activity. And then we're trying to conserve, on a 1-to-1 ratio. So with this acquisition, I know we are doing well on mitigating direct acreage impacts. We might be just a little bit under when you add in the indirect acreages that we calculate during our site visits and when we go through the consultations. So yeah, we're tracking it, trying to match things acres to acres and also dollars to dollars. We do annual monitoring, or we at least plan to do annual monitoring on anything that we purchase or acquire to maintain the high habitat value that we see in the properties. And yeah, we're constantly evaluating different projects against each other and opportunities. We look at things monthly, and we see opportunities come in the form of conservation easements are usually pretty good in terms of bang for buck. But there are, those opportunities are sometimes hard to come by. And so we take a serious look at anything that comes to us or that we may unearth through our searches and outreach efforts. But yeah, we're definitely tracking acres to acres and species to, looking at the impacts to the species habitats and where those funds were generated. If money came from a high priority habitat for pronghorn, we're tracking that. We're trying to put it back into projects that will benefit pronghorn on a 1-to-1 ratio. And so we're tracking it both species and geography and acreage, all three aspects. We're looking at that.
Great.
Commissioner Messner, if I might add that, oftentimes it's difficult to mitigate the impacts on a specific property that the impacts are taking place on. And so we appreciate the flexibility to look at those habitat types and look in the geographic area. We've always got our feelers out. I wouldn't say that fee title is necessarily our, go-to in a situation like this, because what Commissioner Ackerman mentioned as far as operations dollars and also FTEs, because we're in a tight time budget-wise with the state government, and we can't just add FTEs to these. So we have to really evaluate it carefully that we can do an adequate job, more than adequate job of managing those properties if we go down the road of this fee title acquisition like we did here on Eagle Butte. And so we're really always got our feelers out, our staff, working with the companies as Andrew mentioned and Shannon, and so trying to be very diligent about that.
Great. One other question, and understanding that the mitigation fee dollar amounts have been set now for 5 or 6 years, and haven't been adjusted at all. Is there any evaluation that's being done to determine whether the set dollar amounts that are incorporated in the rules are still appropriate for the funding necessary to be able to offset some of the impacts associated or not?
I would say not at our level right here. No, that would require a statewide discussion with DNR and you all as well. So I think that's for another time.
Okay. Thanks for answering my questions.
Further questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Ray?
Thank you, Chair Robbins. I just want to take a moment to thank CPW staff on behalf of the Executive Director Dan Gibbs and the department. Your continued work to make beneficial use of these commensurate mitigation funds is really gratifying. I also want to recognize the coordination that has to occur between ECMC and CPW to make this a reality. I think that's a great example of how two DNR divisions who work in concert can achieve outcomes that support the mission of the department. And it's just really gratifying to see that play out and become real on the ground. So thank you to the CPW team working on this, as well as the ECMC staff to make it possible.
Thank you, Commissioner Ray.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any final questions for the panel? All right. Well, again, we really appreciate you being with us. Thanks for updating us, and we look forward to further updates in the future.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's great. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the cooperation.
All right. Let's take 10 minutes and get the next panel up. It's an OGDP. Let's return at 9:52, and Hearings Manager Thomas, if you could bring up the relevant parties, that would be great. Okay, this is the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. It is October 22nd. It is 9:52. We are back in session. We're going to take up docket 2301-00033, an oil and gas development plan, the Washington OGDP. This one has a unusual procedural history. I think it was in September, we heard the Washington OGDP, and the commission voted at that time to stay further consideration of this matter. That was based upon the uncontroverted fact that there was a bald eagle nest within a distance that precluded the commission from being able to favorably vote on the OGDP. My understanding from the record that I've read is that since that time, and here in the recent weeks, the tree that contained the bald eagle nest lost not one, not two, but three limbs. And one of the third limb that was lost, it was blown down, contained the actual eagle's nest. And my understanding is that if we were to speak with the CPW folks, they would confirm all of that. And they would also confirm to us that there is no longer an objection from Colorado Parks and Wildlife relevant to the eagle's nest, and that it is no longer a factor for consideration by the commission in terms of looking at the OGDP in question. So the wildlife concern no longer exists. With that, I think the first order of action, and I'm looking to AAG Boudreau to maybe show up as well. Do I need to take any evidence on any of that, or can that all just be sort of understood by commission as being true? Because then I'm going to take up the unopposed motion to vacate the stay.
I would say during the unopposed motion to vacate the stay, Extraction could make their arguments, and if you wanted to review any evidence or arguments that they have, you could take that into consideration. I think currently in the record, there is a letter from CPW indicating what you just described. So if you wanted to just move on to the stay, I think that's acceptable.
Okay. Mr. Pashala, I recognize you. I don't need a ton of argument here, but if you want to elaborate on any of the points, please do so.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Robbins. I don't think there's much elaboration that needs to be made. Our papers, I think, set forth the basis for the change in circumstances. And as you noted, the main change is that the tree branches, all three of them, have collapsed. The nest has collapsed. Our motion is supported by a memorandum from Extraction documenting the history of that tree, the condition from back in October 23, October 24, when we had our previous hearing, and the current condition. It's also supported by communications from Colorado Parks and Wildlife identifying that there is no longer a concern with respect to this wildlife item, that the nest has been deemed collapsed. It's no longer an active nest, and there is no objection for this application, the OGDP application from CPW. And there's also an attachment of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service also confirming that the nest is no longer an active nest, that it is it has been collapsed. So I think we'll stand on our papers, and as the order for stay had indicated, that the OGDP would be stayed absent a change of circumstances. That change of circumstances has occurred, and we ask that you approve the motion and retake up the Washington OGDP today. Thank you.
Right. I would also just further note for the record that litigation did ensue following the stay action by the commission. However, that litigation has been dismissed, and so that is no longer at the district court, and thus we have jurisdiction over this matter today. Unless commissioners have questions, I'm happy to make a motion relevant to the vacation of the stay motion. Does any commissioner have questions at this point? Seeing none, I would move to vacate the stay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Ackerman. Do we have further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the stay is vacated, and we now will turn to discussion on the merits of this application. And we'll first hear from Ms. Faber, who has some relevant information that came in kind of late. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Robbins. Good morning, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Laurel Faber, and I am the lead location assessment specialist for the Extraction Washington OGDP. Just a quick note for the record, I was contacted by Extraction staff on October 16th, letting me know that they would like to update some information prior to the hearing. That information includes updates to the equipment for the proposed location. I let them know that they could provide that information to me prior to the hearing, but because the director recommendation has already been published, it would not be added to the application until after the conclusion of the hearing today. That information was sent to me late yesterday afternoon, October 21st, and includes updates to the proposed equipment, a new layout drawing, a new preliminary process flow diagram, and updated Form 2B production air resource emissions. Based on the outcome of the hearing today, this information and data will be updated in the Form 2A and the Form 2B as a part of staff's post-hearing process.
Thank you, Ms. Faber. Does the new information change the director recommendation in any part?
It does not, no.
All right, and just for the record, that's a recommendation of approval, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions of Ms. Faber? I believe that each of the commissioners individually received the new information this morning, so we've had a chance to quickly take a look at it and review it.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. With that, Mr. Priscilla, we've heard the entirety of this application. I'm happy to recognize you and your clients for further elaboration on the application, but I don't know that we need kind of a full-on regurgitation of what we heard before. But if things have changed, maybe some of this new information or otherwise, happy to recognize you and your clients. I would note that anybody you've elevated, provided they were here at the first time around, they remain sworn in and under oath for purposes of testimony.
Thank you, Chair Robbins. We have a presentation that is prepared. It is a summary presentation, so a overview of the development, kind of explaining the history of the Eagle Nest, and a re-summary of best management practices and operational timeline. If it's something that you all feel like you'd want to hear, we're happy to present it. If you are ready to approve based on the prior record, we're happy to go that way as well. I think the substantive record has been made at our prior hearing, and my recollection from that hearing was there was at least comment from 3 commissioners that the application was approvable, but for the Eagle Nest and the Rule 1202C matter, which, as we've discussed, has been resolved and as confirmed by CPW. So if the commission is inclined to just take this up in a vote on the prior record and in that acknowledgement that it was approvable and the director's recommendation that this is an approvable application, I think we can go that way. But if you'd like, we're happy to present. We have, I think in total, at most 20 minutes. And it's, like I said, it's an overview.
Okay. I'm comfortable moving forward without an overview, but I'm only one commissioner. What is the inclination of other commissioners? Commissioner Oath?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I would appreciate the summary.
Okay. With that, we will take the summary up. Please go ahead.
Very good. Bear with me one moment and share my screen to get this presentation up. And can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Well, good morning. My name is Joe Pershella with Wellborn, Sullivan, Meck, and Tooley. And together with my co-counsel, Ana Gutierrez with Womble Bond Dickinson, we represent Extraction Oil and Gas. We're here today, nearly a year to the day, in fact, for a renewed hearing on the Washington OGDP. Presenting for Extraction are Claude Boiteau, Asset Development Lead Engineer, Lila Hooning, Natural Resource Specialist, and Jeff Annable, Manager of Well and Location Permitting. We also have several other representatives available for questions. Before turning this presentation over to the team, I'd just like to give a brief procedural history. Washington OGDP was originally scheduled for hearing in December 14th, 2023. The director's recommendation issued on December 1st, 2023, which found that the Washington application satisfied commission rules and recommended that the commission approve the application. Important to note is that at the time the application was filed and complete, there were no HPH layers impacting the Washington location. In the weeks leading up to that hearing, Extraction discovered, later confirmed by CPW, that a pair of bald eagles had been observed at an old unoccupied raptor nest in a tree near the location. That discovery prompted Extraction to voluntarily continue the hearing and initiate robust consultations between various government agencies, including Fish and Wildlife Service, CPW, and ECMC, on how best to manage and balance the Washington proposal in a manner that was protective of the eagles. On October 23rd, 2024, we came before you to present the Washington OGDP. In the lead up to that hearing, and because of the discovery of the Eagle Nest occupancy, the director requested that Extraction file a Rule 502 variance application for relief from the HPH no surface occupancy requirements of Rule 1202 C1G for bald eagles. Extraction did so under protest, maintaining at all times that Rule 1202C did not apply here, because at the time the application was filed and past completeness, there was no effective HPH, and any change to HPH could not require a retroactive application of 1202C. On October 11th, 2024, the director issued an addendum to the original recommendation, which provided a summary of the Eagle Nest issue, including Extraction's commitment to operate outside the nesting season, and outlined the commission's options, which were to approve the OGDP and the variance, approve the OGDP and deny the variance, or deny both the OGDP and the variance. At that October 23rd hearing, the commission took evidence from Extraction on the OGDP and evidence from both Extraction and CPW on the variance. The commission determined that although there was no effective HPH layer in existence at the time the application was filed and past completeness, the existence of the nest was a change that allowed the commission to enforce Rule 1202C's no surface occupancy buffer absent a variance under Rule 502. The commission denied the variance. And as you know, the variance denial was appealed to Denver District Court pursuant to the Colorado Administrative Procedures Act. As to the OGDP, however, and as relevant now, several commissioners stated that but for the Eagle Nest, the OGDP was approvable and decided that the prudent course of action was to stay the OGDP pending a change in circumstances. And that change in circumstances has occurred. In September 2025, the tree branch supporting the nest has fallen, and the nest collapsed on the ground as confirmed by CPW and Fish and Wildlife Service. That change precipitated the dismissal of the variance appeal in the hearing before you today. The sequence of events is detailed in the second addendum to the director recommendation issued on October 14, 2025. Effectively, the change in circumstance resets this matter back to the fall of 2023, as though the nest never existed, and the application is to be reviewed under the HPH buffers and rules existing at that time. Similarly, the director's findings and recommendation from December 1st, 2023 should apply now. That is, that the Washington OGDP satisfies commission rules and the director recommends approval without any conditions. The record in support of the Washington OGDP as having satisfied Rule 301A has already been made in the prior October 23, 2024 hearing, and as noted earlier, several commissioners unequivocally found that the Washington OGDP was approvable. As a brief reminder, this project has buy-in and approval from the surface owner, numerous developers, and critically, the City of Thornton, which is the relevant local government and party to an operator agreement with extraction. This project is pivotal to allowing several legacy wells to be plugged and abandoned, returning land to communities, and allowing other City of Thornton approved development projects to proceed. The presentation today is therefore intended as a refresher of the record previously established at the October 23rd, 2024 hearing. And the presentation includes a project overview, a summary of the exhaustive alternative location analysis that was performed over many years, a summary of the change in the ground circumstances, and a summary of the operational commitments that make this project best in class. So before I turn this presentation over to Mr. Boiteau, if there are any questions during deliberations or any information that you feel may be missing, please exit deliberations and allow us the opportunity to answer those questions and provide that information. With that, I thank you very much for your time this morning, and I turn the presentation to Mr. Boiteau.
Actually, looks like there's a question, Joe.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Boudreau, go ahead.
I'm not exactly sure who was sworn in at the hearing a couple of years ago. Do you mind if I go ahead and swear in?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, just in abundance of caution.
Thank you. Mr. Boiteau, would you please raise your hand, state your first and last name, and swear to tell the truth?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Claude Boiteau, and I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Claude Boiteau. As Mr. Prajala noted, I'm an asset development engineer representing Extraction Oil and Gas, a wholly owned subsidiary of Civitas Resources. Our testimony today will briefly review the Washington OGDP, the completed alternative location analysis, provide environmental update, and review the best management practices proposed as a component of this application. Testifying in support of the Washington OGDP will be myself, permitting manager, Mr. Jeff Annable, natural resource specialist, Mrs. Lila Huney, and as you've heard, outside counsel, Mr. Joe Prashala. Additionally, subject matter experts are available at the Commission's pleasure to discuss specific components of the OGDP and best management practices. Today, our team will be providing testimony in support of the Washington OGDP. This testimony was intended or is intended to supplement information provided during the first Washington hearing. While we won't be reviewing previously provided material in full, we welcome any questions and are prepared to discuss specific topics as necessary. The proposed Washington surface is planned near the intersection of I-25 and E-470. This location provides for a setback of over 2,000 feet from RVUs to wells and facilities. The relevant local government is the City of Thornton, with Adams County and City and County of Broomfield qualifying as proximate municipalities. Extraction in the City of Thornton entered into an operator agreement in November of 2022. The Washington development consists of 10 new horizontal wells split evenly between two drilling and spacing units, the Washington North and the Washington South DSU. Next slide, please, Joe. Thank you. 3 RBUs fall within 2,000 feet of the proposed working pad surface, all of which have signed letters of informed consent. No schools, childcare facilities, high occupancy building units, or designated outdoor activity areas fall within 1/2 mile of the proposed location. No RBUs within 1 mile of the proposed location fall within a disproportionately impacted community. And finally, no public water systems, riparian corridors, or mapped high priority habitats fall within 2,000 feet of the surface location at the time of OGDP submittal. Thank you. Extraction has performed a robust alternative location analysis as a component of the Washington OGDP. Alternative surface locations were analyzed before and again after the identification of the eagle nest near the proposed location. 6 alternative locations were reviewed as a component of the OGDP submittal. None of these locations offered a comparative protective advantage to health, safety, or the environment over the proposed location. 9 additional surface locations were reviewed following the identification of the nearby eagle nest. These 15 alternative surface locations were further considered for suitability over the intervening months since the OGDP continuation. None of these locations presented significant comparative advantages over the proposed location, and none presented a more efficient means to develop the target minerals as part of this development. I'll now hand the presentation over to Mrs. Huning to review the updated environmental conditions near the proposed location. Thank you.
Thank you, Claude. Mr. Boudreau, do I need to be sworn in first?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Would it be easier to just swear in everyone on their panel?
How many other folks you got, Joe? You're muted, Mr. Pershala.
I think we can just swear in the presenters, and if anyone else needs to answer any specific questions, we can swear them in at that time. So we want to swear in Lila Huning and Jeff Annabelle right now. I think that makes sense.
Let's do that.
Thank you. When I call your name, please be visualized. Raise your hand, state your first and last name, and swear to tell the truth. Lila Huning.
Lila Huning, I swear to tell the truth.
Jeff Annabelle.
Jeffrey Annabelle, I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. I'm the Natural Resource Specialist at Civitas, and I'm here to provide a brief timeline summary of the changes that occurred to the bald eagle nest and its host tree. I will start with a quick recap of 2023 and 2024 observations. Since the nest was first identified, the tree has been in poor condition, as noted during our previous hearing. No successful nesting occurred in 2023 or 2024. In late summer of 2024, one of the 3 main branches collapsed. We have continued to monitor the status of both the nest and the tree, and the next slides will summarize the changes that have occurred in the last year since our previous hearing. Thank you. In early 2025, the second main branch collapsed. After that, only one large branch, the branch containing the nest, remained attached to the tree, and a fracture was visible at the base of that branch. As for the nest, 2025 was the 3rd consecutive year of no successful nesting. In September of 2025, the branch supporting the nest broke off the tree, causing the nest to fall and collapse. CPW and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service were immediately notified the following business day on Monday, September 15th. CPW passed the update along to ECMC staff the same day. The following day, on September 16th, CPW, the surface owner, and members of our team all met on location to confirm and document the changes. In the correspondence between our environmental consultant and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the service confirmed that the nest was no longer officially designated as an eagle nest, which confirmed that the collapsed nest materials were no longer protected under the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. Following the initial notification and site visit with CPW, we provided a summary of the tree and nest changes to CPW and ECMC staff on September 19th for all parties' records. CPW responded on September 22nd and confirmed that the nest was destroyed due to natural degradation, the nest will be removed from the HPH dataset, and that CPW had no further concerns for this OGDP. Lastly, we wanted to take a moment to highlight 2 voluntary mitigation and stewardship efforts that were inspired by this project. The first is a voluntary donation, which we discussed during our previous hearing. In alignment with the concept of compensatory mitigation, which is applied to projects in HPH and was discussed this morning, as well as other common mitigation programs, Extraction voluntarily contributed to a local nonprofit that rehabilitates raptors, including bald eagles. When we met with this organization, we were immediately inspired by their small team of passionate individuals who make a significant impact for local raptors and do so with very limited resources. Our team was excited to provide the donation, but we also hope this is just the start of a longer-term relationship. We are continuing discussions with their staff to explore additional ways that our company may be able to support their team and their mission. The second effort we'd like to highlight is an artificial nest project. During consultations with agency, municipal, and independent wildlife experts for the Washington Project, we had several discussions about the increasing overlap between wildlife ranges and urban activity. In particular, we talked about how raptors are adapting to urban environments and the importance of identifying suitable nesting areas within these spaces. As a result of these discussions, our team was again inspired to do more. In coordination with our consultant in the city of Thornton, we identified preferred nesting habitats within the city's protected lands and are currently developing a proposal to construct an artificial nest site. The goals of this project are to support raptor nesting and conservation and to support wildlife education and hopefully inspire others. There is still more work to be done, but the process so far has been positive and collaborative, and we are dedicated to getting this project across the finish line. In addition to these efforts that stem from consultations for the Washington Project, Civitas is also engaged in broader stewardship projects. For example, Civitas provided grant funding to the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies to help restore native prairie habitat. Civitas is committed to protecting wildlife not only through responsible operations at its facilities, but also through meaningful projects and partnerships. Last but certainly not least, we would like to thank CPW, ECMC, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, City of Thornton, and all other groups who have consulted on the Washington OGDP and stewardship projects. We truly appreciate everyone's time and input over the last several years and look forward to more collaboration ahead. Thank you. I will now hand the presentation over to Jeff Annable.
Thank you, Lila, and good morning, Commissioners. I would now like to provide a brief review of the best-in-class, site-specific best management practices that will be implemented as a part of this development. First, I would like to cover our siting and construction approach, which starts with avoidance. The proposed washing pad is sited more than 2,600 feet from schools, childcare centers, and other sensitive uses, as well as outside of HPH. We then minimized impacts by siting the wells and facilities on the proposed pad more than 2,000 feet from residences. The proposed location siting aligns with local land use plans and is near major transportation corridors, which will minimize traffic impacts. Finally, we mitigate construction impacts by controlling dust with fresh water on access roads, conducting avian surveys before construction, and managing topsoil stockpiles with best practices to support future revegetation. During drilling, we minimize impacts by using utility-powered drilling rig and Group 3 drilling mud, both of which lower emissions and minimize noise and odor. Mitigation best management practices include cleaning the pipe as it is removed, hauling drill cuttings offsite daily, installing a polyethylene liner for spill prevention, and installing a 32-foot sound wall around the entire site before drilling begins to mitigate noise that originates from the drilling operations. During completions, we reduce traffic, emissions, and noise by piping fresh water through temporary lay-flat lines, utilizing Tier 4 equivalent engines or better, and routing flowback through emission-controlled facilities. For mitigation, gas will be routed to a gas sales at first production. Completion sand will be stored and transported in sealed containers, and the liners will remain in place for spill prevention as well as the 32-foot sound walls. Finally, once in production, our goal is a small, efficient footprint. Facilities run on utility power, three-phase pipelines will be in place before first production, and the facility design will be tankless, utilize pressurized maintenance vessel for maintenance operation, and include three-phase meters and bulk separators, which is the change that was provided to staff prior to the hearing. This change cuts the number of separators and is aimed at reducing equipment footprint and emissions. No permanent lighting will be installed. The wells will be capable of being shut in remotely. Equipment will be painted to blend with the landscape, and the installation of a continuous leak detection system will be operational for the life of the pad. Now, I'd like to go over the beneficial impacts. This project will deliver lasting benefits. We will plug 5 legacy wells, which include the decommissioning of 10 tanks, the elimination of hundreds of annual vehicle trips, and the reclamation of over 5 acres with a net positive of nearly 1.36 acres reclaimed. Additionally, these reclamations will result in a removal of about 8 tons per year in VOC emissions, which is a net removal of approximately 5.37 tons of emissions. In short, this plan not only minimizes new impacts, but also improves the environment and community conditions long term. I would now like to hand this presentation back over to Joe to close out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your time this morning, commissioners. That concludes our presentation. We just respectfully request that you approve the Washington OGDP, and we are now available for questions.
All right, thank you for the summary and the presentation. Commissioners, the panel is open for questions. Commissioner Oath?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you all very much for providing the summary and kind of some updates. That is just really helpful to just go over that again. So thank you for that. I wanted to just ask a couple things. So with respect to the changes to some of the equipment that was provided in the last day or so, and Mr. Annabelle, I know you talked about this briefly. It sounds, I'm trying to do a quick comparison because I wasn't seeing it side by side from what was anticipated previously to what you're expecting now with these changes to equipment, but it sounds like you're anticipating a reduction in emissions. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So our original design had a separator per well, and now we're going with bulk separators. I think it's approximately 2 bulk separators, and all like pressurized vessels, and then 3-phase meters. So yes, this cuts emissions, if I remember correctly, approximately in half from the original design.
In half for
VOC emissions.
Which pollutants? VOCs. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, and then that last slide, I think you had like a 8 tons per year reduction in VOCs, but was that, I think, was from the plugging and abandoning, not the change to this equipment. Is that right? Okay.
That's correct. But factoring in the emissions, long-term emissions annually, it'll be reduced by, I think it was 5 tons per year. So we're ultimately reducing emissions in the area if you factor in the reclamations.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate that. And then I just wanted to see if there's any changes or updates around 2 other items. So it was noted in the CDPHE consultation that at the time, a year ago when we were reviewing this, that you weren't able to make a commitment to conduct completions activities outside of school hours. So just giving timing changes, wondered if anything has shifted in that regards.
I'll maybe take a stab at this and then hand it over to Claude Boiteau. So with kind of the delay that we've experienced, we're up against a tight timeline. So as far as having the completion operations outside of school hours would probably be difficult to commit to at this time.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. I don't have much to add. Jeff nailed it with the timeline. As we're currently planning the project, it does align. The majority of the development does align with summertime activities, and so we would be avoiding to the best of our ability. But we do have that end of operations timeline that we have to be cognizant of.
Okay, thanks. And appreciate that much of the activity can occur outside of school hours, and note that the school itself is not within 2,000 feet. I just wanted to get a little bit more information about that.
Yeah.
And I guess on that same note, I know the trucking route is going by the school, and so want to just confirm that the commitment to have just the light duty vehicle traffic occurring during kind of the school commuting hours is still in play.
Yeah, that's still in place.
Great.
Per our operator agreement, we have to abide by transportation timeline requirements.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Oath. Further questions for the panel? Seeing no further questions, we move into the deliberation stage of these proceedings on this OGDP. Does any commissioner desire to initiate deliberations? Commissioner Ackerman.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the recap here today. I just wanted to start by saying that Extraction did the right thing here initially. When they reported the nest, after they themselves discovered the nest, they immediately began work with CPW. It's clear that that self-report resulted in significant inconvenience and expense to Extraction through the indefinite stay of this application. It illustrates a little bit how dynamic raptor nesting is, and I just want to talk a bit about why it's important to protect nests. As was the case with this pad, there's always an argument that can be made that removing just one nest won't significantly impact a species, and on a one-off basis, I would concede that's likely true. But to be clear, removing a nest will almost certainly result in a reproductive failure of the nesting pair utilizing that nest during that nesting season, and consequently, a policy that cumulatively dismisses nesting habitat on a one-off basis whenever and wherever we want to develop will certainly impact the habitat and well-being of the species in question in Colorado. Habitat loss is the single greatest factor contributing to the decline of wildlife, impacting more species than all other major threats combined. It's widely identified as the primary driver of biodiversity loss and species extinction. And protection of raptor nests is a critically important aspect of wildlife conservation in Colorado. CPW's positions that the literature demonstrates that the only way to protect nests is through a no surface occupancy buffer zone, resulting in this nest and other nests inclusion in our rule 1202C1, which does provide for no surface occupancy to otherwise unmitigatable surface habitats. CPW is the state's management arm for wildlife and the state's expert on wildlife issues, and I certainly stand by CPW's efforts to do so even when it's inconvenient. I want to point out that CPW's concerns with this application were abated, as was stated here, with the natural loss of the nesting habitat. And CPW standing strong on a difficult issue that did cause considerable issues for Extraction is something that I think is important to point out. Conversely, their amenability to this moving forward once the condition changed is a significant indication that CPW is motivated solely by their mission to perpetuate the wildlife resources of the state. And in doing so, to me, makes them a very trusted partner in helping us complete the wildlife portion of our mission. I was one of the commissioners who stated that, but if not for the Eagle's Nest, this would be an approvable application. I stand by that position and I'm in favor of its approval, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thanks for leading us off on deliberations. I think that was appropriate from our wildlife commissioner. Other thoughts from folks? Commissioner Cross?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Ackerman, for leading us off. I'll be quick. I also was one of the commissioners that said, but for the Eagle's Nest, this would be an approvable application. And I think if nothing else, this has been even improved based off of what we heard and the information we received. I appreciate the efforts to, one, look at a large number of our alternative locations. I appreciate the efforts to make sure that utility power would be used both during the drilling as well as during the production timelines. And I think it's interesting, especially after this happened, as I'd drive up to see my family in Wyoming at different times. You drive by the area and see the large amount of development that's already occurring by this. And so I do think that it's important to note that this is a good location. This is a good place for this to happen. And I appreciate the hard work being done by the operator here to make sure that not only is it a good location, but they're taking all the steps necessary to make sure that truck trips are being reduced, that emissions are being reduced, and that they're trying to get this done in a timeline consistent with what other developers in the region are trying to do as well. So I also continue to believe this is an approvable application and will be voting in favor.
Further deliberation? Does anybody desire to make a motion? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I don't believe we had any COAs here, and I think a simple motion to approve this application as presented originally and amended today would be sufficient, and look to AAG Boudreaux or any
Hey,
concerns.
AG Pedro, do we need to do anything with the new information that was submitted yesterday?
I think Commissioner Ackerman's note about additional information presented today is sufficient in the motion.
All right, we have a motion. I will second that motion. Do we have further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much to the applicant, Mr. Priscilla, and thanks to staff for the work here. Want to echo the points made by Commissioner Ackerman that I appreciate the applicant notifying us of the presence of the eagle nest. That's the right thing to do, despite the fact that it caused some delay, but I'm glad that we've got to a final resolution here.
Thank you all very much today. Appreciate it.
All right, let's take 10 and get the next matter lined up. That's docket that ends in 306. We'll return at 1042. All right, welcome back. It's the Energy and Carbon Management Commission continued business agenda on October 22nd at 1043. We will now take up docket 241200306. This is an oil and gas development plan. It is proposed by Catamount Energy Partners. It's entitled the Outpost 33-8 OGDP. We do not have any public comment, so we will turn to Catamount for its presentation. If the witnesses for Catamount could elevate themselves and visualize, we'll get you sworn in and we'll be able to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask each of the witnesses to be visualized. When I call your name, please raise your hand, state your first and last name, and swear to tell the truth. Rusty Kelly.
Rusty Kelly, I swear to tell the truth.
Denise Greer. You're muted, Miss Greer.
Denise Greer, I swear to tell the truth.
Craig Reed.
I swear to tell the truth.
Kyle Caesar.
Kyle Caesar, I swear to tell the truth.
Alan Kane.
I swear to tell the truth.
Mr. Priscilla, did I get everyone?
You did. And apparently my video is stopped on your end. I guess you guys have had enough of me for the day, seeing my face. But if you could start me up, there we go. Great, thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Priscilla, go ahead.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Good to see you, Chair Robbins and commissioners again. My name is Joe Priscilla. I'm a shareholder of Wellborn, Sullivan, Meck, and Tooley, and I am appearing on behalf of Catamount Energy Partners here today. I'm pleased to present Catamount's first oil and gas development plan application to you, the Outpost 33-8 oil and gas development plan. And I'm going to go ahead and try to get my screen share going. Pardon me one moment here. Great, you should be able to see my screen now. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Director Murphy and ECMC staff for their work on this application. We greatly appreciate staff's professionalism and the thoroughness in working with us to get this application ready to present to the Commission. With me today and presenting for Catamount is Rusty Kelly, Vice President of Catamount, and also available to answer questions are Craig Reed, President of Catamount, Denise Greer, Senior Landman, Kyle Caesar, Environmental Consultant. I hope I said that right, Mr. Caesar, and Alan Kane, Air Quality Consultant. The application requests that the Commission approve an oil and gas development plan covering approximately 2,560 acres in Township 33 North, Range 8 West, New Mexico, Prime Meridian, La Plata County, covering all of sections 22, 23, 26, and 27. The application requests the Commission approve two Form 2As. The first is for the Outpost 33-8 pad, which includes the expansion of an existing active oil and gas location, the Dokar 33-8-26. It's a location that's currently operated by Red Willow Production Company. There are two Fruitland Coal Formation gas wells on that location, one vertical, one directional, both operated by Red Willow and will continue to be operated by Red Willow. And as you'll hear, Catamount has a pad sharing agreement in place with Red Willow. Catamount is requesting the Commission approve 10 new horizontal wells on that outpost pad. The second Form 2A is for approval of a new but temporary disturbance for an associated tank pad, the outpost called the outpost tank pad. This pad will be used to store fresh water for completions and will be fully reclaimed at the end of the completion operations. The well pad and the tank pad are sited within the mineral development area. Catamount intends to explore for and produce gas from the Mancos Formation. This is an exploratory project, which is important as it relates to the development timeline and the wildlife timing stipulations. Unlike well-established DJ Basin, Niobrara, and Codell horizontal development, horizontal drilling in the Mancos Formation is a new horizon, with only a handful of existing wells in this area. Thus, as you will hear, Catamount's planned operations will include an exploratory and evaluation phase, followed by an additional drilling phases based on the initial results. While Catamount would obviously prefer a single occupation as it is less costly and resource intensive, the proposed phased development approach will inform and ultimately make more efficient the additional drilling on this pad, but as well for future drilling projects. Associated with the OGDP is a companion Rule 305 drilling and spacing unit application that requests the Commission establish an approximate 2,560 acre drilling and spacing unit for the application lands with 10 horizontal wells for the production of gas from the Mancos Formation. The proposed DSU contains both fee minerals and Southern Ute Indian Tribe minerals. There are no federal minerals or local government owned minerals in the DSU. Catamount does own leasehold and has the consent of at least 45% of the working interest in the application lands. And as you'll hear, Catamount is working with BLM and La Plata County to obtain the necessary permits to timely begin development as proposed. Catamount has a well-established working relationship with both BLM and La Plata County and does not foresee any hurdles to those permits being issued here in the near term. As to the location itself, it is within the boundaries of the Southern Ute Indian Tribe Reservation. The location is on fee, however, it's on fee rangeland surface and is subject to a surface use agreement with the surface owner. As noted earlier, the Outpost 33-8 pad is an expansion of an existing Red Willow operated well pad, and Catamount is working with Red Willow on, or has the pad sharing agreement with Red Willow to allow for harmonious and safe co-operations on this location. The location does meet certain Rule 304 B2B criteria, thereby warranting an alternative location analysis. As you'll hear, there are 2 RDUs within 2,000 feet of the working pad surface, and Catamount has obtained informed consent from those owners. The outpost pad is upgrading from a mapped water resource, and Catamount has obtained a waiver from CPW for that item as well. The pad is within HPH for mule deer severe winter range. While CPW did not waive, Catamount has consulted closely with CPW regarding the planned operations, including the first exploratory occupation between December 2025 and January 2026, which CPW supports. All remaining operations will occur outside applicable HPH timing stipulations. Catamount is committed to paying CPW $13,750 in direct mitigation fees. Catamount does have a gathering agreement with Red Cedar Gathering Company and is securing an agreement with Red Willow for the use of existing gas and produced water takeaway. Catamount will use lay flat freshwater lines to reduce truck traffic and wildlife disturbance. And Catamount will conduct raptor, owl, and migratory bird surveys prior to construction. In all, CPW supports the Outpost 33-8 pad and the operational plans. The pad is also within 2,000 feet of, as I mentioned, the 2 RVUs, but they are within a disproportionately impacted community, which is the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. The Southern Ute Indian Tribe has submitted a letter in support of Catamount's OGDP. Catamount's alternative location analysis evaluated 4 alternatives, and as you'll hear, all but one are also all within HPH. And for that one location that is outside of HPH, it would be on land owned by the tribe, which did not agree to providing a surface use agreement for that location, as it prefers the expansion of the existing pad chosen for the Outpost 33-8 pad. And considering all of the factors and in consultation with CPW and the tribe, Catamount has determined that the Outpost 33-8 pad is the best of the alternatives. With respect to your standard of review, it would be under Rule 301A, whether the proposed operations protect, minimize adverse impacts to public health, safety, and welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. And as you'll hear, Catamount has evaluated this project with the primary goal of avoiding impacts and thereafter minimizing and mitigating any unavoidable impacts. You'll hear that consistent with Rule 603E, as I noted, Catamount is proposing to use an existing location to avoid and minimize new disturbance and impacts. Catamount has obtained informed consent from the RVUs within 2,000 feet. There are no other human receptors within 2,000 feet of the location, thereby avoiding impacts to the general public. There will be use of an existing access road, avoiding new construction, use of existing gas and produced water pipeline infrastructure that avoids new infrastructure installation associated traffic impacts. Catamount will deploy sound walls to shield those two RVUs from noise. Catamount's committing to use Group 3 low odor drilling mud and will deploy a suite of best management practices for the protection of groundwater, including berms, diversion ditches, secondary containment, and remote emergency shutdown capability. These are just some of the best management practices and commitments that Catamount will employ to avoid, protect, and minimize and mitigate adverse impacts to public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. With respect to the relevant local government is La Plata County, and Catamount is working with the county to obtain the necessary permits that should issue in the near term prior to construction of the location. There are no proximate local governments. Catamount is not seeking any variances. Notice was issued pursuant to Rule 303E1 and Rule 504. No petitions or protests were received. And on October 1st, 2025, the director issued a recommendation with one condition of approval for the Outpost 33.8 pad, and that's on page 6 of the director recommendation. The COA relates to the initial occupation in December 2025 through January 2026 for the drilling and completion of 2 horizontal wells, with all subsequent operations occurring outside of the wildlife timing stipulations. Catamount agrees to this COA. And with that, Catamount respectfully requests that the Commission adopt the director's recommendation and approve the Outpost 33.8 OGDP. And with that, I'll turn this presentation over to Mr. Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Chair Robbins and fellow commissioners for your time today. As Joe mentioned, my name is Rusty Kelly. I'm a partner with Catamount Energy Partners here in Denver. This is Catamount's first OGDP application, and we are happy to be able to present it to you today. Although it's our first OGDP, we have operated in the San Juan Basin of Colorado for over a decade, and I've testified many times to the Commission over the past couple of decades. Next slide, Joe. In addition to Mr. Pashala, we have Kyle Caesar, our environmental consultant, Alan Kane, our air quality consultant, and several additional Catamount team members, including Craig Reed and Denise Greer, to help answer questions today. The outline for our presentation will cover the location overview and development plans, our permitting timeline. We'll step through the alternative location analysis, our proposed operations timeline, and our best management practices. The Catamount Outpost 33.8 OGDP proposal consists of 2 Form 2As to develop a 2560 acre drilling and spacing unit in sections 22, 23, 26, and 27, all in Township 33 North, 8 West, all in La Plata County, Colorado. Development of this OGDP would involve 2 Form 2As. One Form 2A is a well pad expansion of an existing pad operated by Red Willow Production Company, and the other is a water tank pad planned for storing completion water and 2 large volume above ground storage tanks. The proposal is for 10 horizontal wells to develop fee and tribal minerals in the Mancos Formation. Catamount anticipates 3 occupations to develop all 10 wells and interim reclaim the well pad and fully reclaim the tank pad. Catamount does own or has support of greater than 45% of the leasehold in the OGDP lands. Catamount conducted a pre-application meeting on November 13th, 2024, with both La Plata County staff and La Plata County's consulting group. Catamount staff and consultants also attended this meeting and discussed the new La Plata County regs, and specifically the number of wells in the section already, the expansion of existing pad, and La Plata County setbacks. La Plata County did follow up on this consultation with an email on the same day to Catamount to proceed in filing the minor oil and gas facility permit for the Outpost project. Catamount and CPW conducted their initial consultation on site on November 5th, 2024. Catamount discussed the high priority habitat of severe mule deer winter range and also wetlands at the preferred location. And we also discussed the alternative locations. As mentioned, no opposing public comments were received for this OGDP. CDPHE consulted with the Southern Ute Indian Tribe on the Outpost project and waived consultation with Catamount. And the flow chart on this slide shows the key consultation dates that Catamount had with the Southern Ute Indian Tribe, CPW, and La Plata County. And in addition to these key dates, Catamount has and continues to consult and coordinate with La Plata County, the Southern Ute Indian Tribe, CPW, and of course, ECMC staff. Next slide. The proposed Outpost 33-8 OGDP consists of two Form 2As. The first is for the well pad itself, which is the expansion of the existing Dokar Red Willow operated pad. And then Catamount does have a pad share agreement with Red Willow Production Company for this location. The second Form 2A is for the water tank pad to the north and west, as depicted on this location overview drawing. This pad would be completely reclaimed after drilling and completion. The upper portion of the slide shows the proposed Outpost well pad. It is in the Southeast La Plata zoning district in an agricultural area. Access is off of County Road 318, and Catamount has an executed SUA with the landowner for this pad. Some highlights of this location include the pad being an expansion off of an existing 2-well pad. It will be expanded to 7.28 acres and will be reclaimed back to 3.92 acres for production operations. The pad utilizes an existing access road, and it is proposed for 10 2-mile lateral wells. The new wells will utilize existing gas and water lines. The pad will be electrified, and the pad will have 6 produced water tanks and no oil tanks. The lower portion of this slide shows the Outpost 33-8 water tank pad. It is also in the Southeast La Plata zoning district. It is accessed via the same road access, and we also have an executed surface use agreement for this pad. The tank pad would contain 3.79 acres of total disturbance and will be used for freshwater storage. This is a rather short-term disturbance in that we plan to use it for 2 ASTs during completion, and then after completion, all wells will be fully reclaimed back to the original condition. Next slide. Catamount did prioritize, evaluated, and considered key cultural and environmental features to prioritize avoidance of impacts when selecting the Outpost 33-8 location and access road. As mentioned previously, this location does trigger an alternative location analysis for the following reasons. The proposed working pad surface is within a 1/4 mile of one or more residential building units. Catamount has secured informed consent waivers from the 2 residential building unit owners. The proposed oil and gas location is upgrading of a map wetland. Catamount obtained a waiver from CPW for this. The proposed oil and gas location is within high priority habitat as mapped by CPW. Catamount consulted continuously with CPW to plan activities and to minimize impacts. All but one of the alternative locations that we will review is in the high priority habitat, and the single location that is not in high priority habitat is owned by the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. The proposed working pad surface is within 1 mile of an RBU within a disproportionately impacted community. The location is within the exterior boundaries of the Suit Reservation, which contains many areas classified as disproportionately impacted communities. Suit does support this location and proposed development. Catamount has a pad sharing agreement with Red Willow Production for this location. Moving into the alternative location analysis. The first alternative we reviewed was in section 23 of Township 33 North and Range 8 West. It has the following key advantages. It uses an existing access road also. It has existing gas infrastructure. It has no high occupancy building units, schools, or childcare centers within 2,000 feet, and it has electric utility power nearby. The key disadvantages of this alternative location is that it has one residential building unit within 1,100 feet. It's immediately upgrading of a mapped wetland corridor, and it's within a high priority habitat area. It is in a position that we could not fully develop the DSU from this location, so it would require an additional pad to develop the full DSU. The second alternative we reviewed was in section 22 of Township 33 North, Range 8 West. It has the following key advantages, and then it has no high occupancy building units, schools, or child care centers within 2,000 feet. Some key disadvantages. It does have one residential building unit within 2,000 feet. It is immediately up gradient of a map wetland corridor. It is partially within high priority habitat. And Catamount, again, could not fully develop the DSU from this location either. So it would require a second pad to fully develop the DSU and the associated impacts from that second pad. Next slide. One more slide there, Joe.
Yeah, I've got it. My system is glitching here, it looks like. Let me try. Give me 1 second. I might have to end slideshow and start again. There we go.
Thank you. The third location we reviewed for the alternative location analysis is located in section 28 of Township 33 North, Range 8 West. The key advantages are it is not within 2,000 feet of one or more residential building units or high occupancy building units. There are no high occupancy building unit schools or child care centers within 2,000 feet. Key disadvantages, this location is on the north end of the Mesa Mountains, creating topographic challenges. It is 600 feet in elevation higher than the nearby portions of the DSU. It's got limited sufficient gas infrastructure in the area, which would result in requiring new pipeline construction back into the HPH areas to move the gas. It falls within an area designated as a La Plata County Skyline Viewshed, and it is located on trust lands for the Southern Ute Indian Tribe, and Catamount was unable to obtain a surface use agreement for this location. And the fourth location reviewed for alternative location analysis is located in 26 of Township 33 North, Range 8 West. The key advantages are there are no RBUs, high occupancy building units, schools, or child care centers within 2,000 feet. The disadvantages are it is immediately up gradient of a mapped wetland corridor. It is within high priority habitat, and Catamount cannot fully develop the DSU from this location, and it would require an additional pad and all the associated impacts from the second pad. This map shows the 4 alternative locations that Catamount reviewed during its location analysis. Importantly, it also shows the disproportionately impacted community boundary in the kind of subtle orange crosshatch. Note that the entire drilling and spacing unit is within the disproportionately impacted community, and the disproportionately impacted community extends to the east off the map and extends over a mile to the west side of the proposed drilling and spacing unit, where another disproportionately impacted community exists. This slide shows Catamount's proposed operational timeline for the Outpost 33-8 OGDP. Our proposal is to develop 2 wells by drilling and completing them beginning in November of this year. This plan would allow us to confirm the existence of this resource before we went into a full development mode. This would require an intrusion into the CPW standard winter timing limitations for mule deer high priority habitat in this area, which typically starts December 1st and continues through April 30th. Catamount has consulted with CPW to come up with a plan that would allow us to drill, complete, and then interim reclaim the well pad and fully reclaim the water pad in 3 occupations, with the first occupation starting next month. We believe if we delayed the start time until late spring of 2026, we would be unable to get this DSU fully developed and reclaimed with 2 occupations, and it would push reclaim into a 3rd season, delaying full tank pad reclamation until late 28 instead of 2027, and delaying well pad interim reclamation. Additionally, there is drilling rig equipment in the area that is finishing a project and is available for Catamount to use currently. And we could use this equipment for the first 2 wells of the Outpost project while it is still local and before it moves out of the basin to minimize truck trips and associated emissions. Additionally, a working rig is more efficient and would allow us to minimize days over an out of basin rig and possibly further reduce impacts by capturing those efficiencies. If we delay until spring, it is possible we would need to bring in a drilling rig from a much greater distance, adding additional impacts via additional traffic and emissions. After this first program, if successful, Catamount proposes to drill and complete the remaining wells between May 1st and December 1st in subsequent years. Next slide. Catamount will implement wildlife best management practices to mitigate and minimize impacts. Certain key BMPs that Catamount will use include implementing a wildlife education program for employees and for contractors. We will not use pits. We will conduct a raptor nest survey, migratory bird nest survey, and a burrowing owl nest survey prior to construction. We'll conduct interim reclamation of the well pad and final reclamation of the tank pad as soon as practicable. Utilize a closed loop system for drilling. Only fresh water would be stored in the tanks on the tank bed. Use freshwater lay flat lines instead of trucking to reduce truck traffic to location for completions. Wells would be equipped with a SCADA automation system for remote monitoring and shutdown. Catamount would install exclusionary devices to prevent wildlife access to equipment stacks, vents, and other openings. A CPW-approved wildlife-friendly seed mix would be used. We would conduct weed management and control program, and all artificial lighting would be shielded and directed towards the working pad surface. Also notably, the map on this slide depicts the outpost, proposed drilling and spacing unit in green, the proposed well pad and the water pad in red, and the mule deer high priority habitat is indicated in the horizontal blue lines. Also, the southwestern part of the unit is characterized by the steeper slopes and elevated topography that I mentioned up into the Mesa Mountain areas. Lastly, the base tracks are some Southern Ute Indian tribe lands in the vicinity and in the DSU. Some of the best management practices that Catamount would implement for public welfare include reduced emissions with traffic, with gas and produced water pipeline takeaway, noise limitation mitigation per La Plata County and ECM regulations, including sound walls on the north and east side of the pad to shield the RVUs. We have a light plan implementation to take place to minimize impacts from lighting, fresh water mud system for surface and intermediate hole sections, and group 3 low odor drilling mud for curb and lateral hole sections. Additionally, some of the best management practices that we would implement for water resources include having a CPW waiver for being upgrading of an irrigation ditch and wetlands, ensuring all tanks have secondary control containment and control measures, conduct baseline water sampling, and have emergency shutdown capability on production equipment. And some additional best management practices for stormwater would include stripping topsoil and storing on site for reuse during interim and final reclaim, having ditches, berms, sediment control logs, and sediment traps installed around the perimeter, conducting site inspections weekly for BMP integration and after each significant rain event, monitoring and maintaining vegetation on topsoil piles to prevent loss of the topsoil. Additional BMPs for air quality would include pad electrification, installing vapor control on tanks, conducting quarterly LDAR inspections with FLIR cameras, using non-emitting pneumatic controllers. Some of the key best management practices that Catamount will implement for automation include having a SCADA system monitoring that allows for continuous monitoring of the operations. This will decrease traffic and reduce vehicle emissions. And Catamount will install emergency shutdown systems. In conclusion, the as proposed Outpost 33-8 location and planned operations do satisfy 301A. They protect and minimize adverse impacts to public health, safety, and welfare, the environment and wildlife resources. Catamount believes the proposed location, siting, and BMPs avoid, minimize, and mitigate impacts to public health, safety, and welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. Finally, some key summary points are that no schools or child care facilities exist within a half a mile. The project is located using existing pad, road, and pipeline infrastructure. Catamount has obtained informed consent from 2 residential building unit owners within a half a mile of the working pad surface. A CPW waiver for upgradient of a wetland has been obtained, and Catamount proudly coordinated planned operations windows with CPW, and Catamount has obtained project support from the Southern Ute Indian Tribe. With that, I'll turn that back over to Joe. Thank you, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Commissioners, you've received the presentation. Nothing more from me to add other than we request that you approve the OGDP. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. Commissioners, the panel of witnesses is available for questions. Commissioner Ackerman.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the operator for being here today and for council. I recognize, as stated, this is the first OGDP for Catamount and want to thank you for your work and coordination. It looks like you've worked hard to work with those entities that you've needed to work with to get this application before us. That said, I do have a couple of relatively significant concerns that I wanted to see if I could get some clarification on. And for those that have listened in the past, these are probably quite predictable. And those concerns are, of course, working through the timing restrictions in the initial season with no proposed end date, as well as the multiple occupations. And so I just wanted to add a little color to those concerns and then ask you a question. Timing stipulations within high priority habitat are a key protection for wildlife, and they are a very foundational component to the avoidance portion of the mitigation hierarchy that ECMC relies upon. And while each site is different, our general practice has been to ensure that avoidance by avoiding that period as much as possible, and often with some type of ability to bleed into the early part of those limitations, as the early part is less impactful for wildlife. Hand in hand with that is that generally multiple occupations increase impacts both to wildlife and surrounding people. And 3 occupations seems pretty excessive for 10 wells. Most operators that come before us propose developing this number of wells in a single occupation. And so you touched on this, and I think, I understand some of the points you made. It does seem to me that both of these concerns can be solved at once by waiting until May and developing outside of the timing restrictions and doing as much as possible in one occupation with a little bit of bleed over or potentially a second occupation the following spring. And so can you elaborate on how working through the winter is demonstrating first avoidance of impacts rather than moving straight to just minimization and mitigation of those impacts?
Yeah, just with the timing window of being able to work May 1st to December 1st, mathematically, it's very difficult to drill this number of wells, drill and complete that number of wells in the total days available, which I think are like 214 days per season when you look at that. And that's pretty tight to hit if we, if we have a rig lined up at the gate the day that we can open, and then we're lucky enough to be at a stoppable point. We just don't think mathematically we can drill this amount of wells, and I certainly hear what you're saying about many operators can drill faster than this. We watched DJ Basin operations, and they're just there's some circumstances with depletion that we have that require us to set an extra string of casing and cement that in place to be protective. We have to be safe, and so we think this model that we put together is extremely realistic for what it takes to drill well in La Plata County. And then finally, if we can get out there and prove this up, then we would come back and drill what we believe 2 additional years of drilling are. If it doesn't prove up, then we wouldn't be back. And our experience with trying to reseed and revegetate early is not good. And we think that even to your point, that we might have to encroach to get it in 2 years. We think the best time to encroach, and working with CPW, they agree on this, is in a fall time period. And if we did that this year and then we drilled in 26 and 27, we have enough time to go ahead and reclaim and vegetate and capture the winter moisture at the end of 27 rather than spill into 28 and use 30 to 60 days there. And then we have exposed topsoil for a while before we get winter moisture. So that's kind of the rationale that we worked with CPW through to get to this point.
Mr. Kelly, also, can you just elaborate a little bit further on, this is the Mancos. Have y'all drilled in the Mancos before? What's the development look like for this formation, this area?
Yeah, so we have, in our experiences in the Fruitland Formation, which is a little shallower than this, and industry has only drilled 11 wells. So in both La Plata and Archuleta County, there are only 11 producing horizontal Mancos wells. So we'd be hopeful to capture efficiencies in the future. It's just not at a state that we can do that. We're still in the sort of exploration and appraisal phase of this play.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Pershala, for adding that color that led into my next question. It does seem like you're in a bit of a wildcatting stage here, which certainly is important to understand and gather data before moving forward. And as I understand it, Mr. Kelly, essentially the majority of the reason for not wanting to begin the operation in this coming May, rather than through the winter, is because there's an available drill rig nearby. That's the driving factor?
That's one of the factors. We'd also like to finish the project up and not be out there in 28 as well. So we think there's 2 good reasons to do that.
Gotcha. Yeah, if you did 2 wells and then waited till the following year, then you'd have to do 8 wells potentially in 7 months, which is difficulty. So potentially bleeding over there, I understand. Mr. Chair, I recognize that CPW has recommended approval with a condition of approval. I do have some questions that would be more appropriate, probably directed at CPW, as how they arrived at this, as it's a bit of a unique circumstance. and would ask at your discretion if we'd have an opportunity to call them up for a question.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Hearings Manager Thomas, can you elevate the CPW person that would be appropriate here?
Thanks. And I believe that would be Peter Foote and or potentially Brian McGee, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. We are elevating Mr. Foote.
Thank you for being with us, Mr. Foote. Commissioner Ackerman may have some questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I certainly didn't mean to preempt, but I appreciate you letting me.
Let's just follow along on this segue.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Mr. Foote, I believe you've had an opportunity to listen so far. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner Ackerman. Thank you.
Thanks. So you've heard, I have significant concerns that potentially avoidance isn't occurring here, as the proposal is to work through the timing limitations throughout this winter, really with no limitation or no endpoint. As I mentioned to the operator, generally we've tried to avoid those periods and allowed some bleed over, especially more into the early part of those seasons, as those are less impactful for wildlife within HPH. This is the first time I've seen an opinion that so long as an operator is in position prior to the beginning of the timing limitations, as per the COA that you all have proposed, then that would allow for construction, drilling, and completions throughout the winter, really with no committed endpoint, essentially making it possible for construction, drilling, and completions to take place throughout the timing limitations entirely through this winter. Again, for those listening, timing stipulations are key protection for wildlife. And I feel like, can you discuss a little bit more? I've certainly read all your documentations in the wildlife plan, how you came to this recommendation and why the approach to winter timing restrictions is different in this case than any other we've ever seen since the passage of Senate Bill 181. And specifically, ostensibly to me, why could this approach not be extrapolated to all other developments, so long as they're in place and mobilized prior to the beginning of the timing steps, thus creating the disturbance that doesn't really allow animals to move into that area and that might discourage their use of that area. Then working through the timing stipulations in those areas where you've already discouraged the infiltration of animals would be okay. I'm concerned about the precedent that this may be setting and really want to understand your thinking here.
Yeah, thanks for that, Commissioner Ackerman. And I understand that concern. This site is a fairly unique site compared to a lot of the San Juan Basin. We do not map high priority habitats down to a parcel level, but during on-sites, we do go out and we examine the on-ground characteristics. Some things to note with this site in particular is, it is in a high density area. So the existing impacts from oil and gas activity is there. Couple other factors that come into play with this is the parcel itself, the well pad is on, receives high intensity grazing, and then the neighboring parcel that the tank pad will be on is fallowed ag field from dryland agricultural practices that took place over a long period of time and since have gone fallowed. So the direct area directly surrounding this site doesn't provide quite the habitat benefit you'd typically expect within high priority habitats. Now, once we get a little outside that bubble, there are extremely important mule deer habitats in close proximity to this location. So essentially, we work to minimize the potential most significant impacts. A lot of that has to do with the long-term removal of habitat. And within the condition of approval that we stated, Catamount would be finishing up at the early winter months, and as you're aware, the most sensitive time period for mule deer is the later winter months. So it's under our impression that the existing impacts are pervasive and sustained, resulting in these poor habitat conditions at this site. These impacts have impact current mule deer utilizations, and we suspect if they stick to the condition of approval, they're not likely to significantly impact mule deer beyond which is already occurring on the landscape. Now, with that being said, avoidance remains our most effective tool in the toolbox. This is a unique situation with the combination of factors that we have not experienced before in the San Juan Basin, and we do not anticipate this to happen often in the future, nor would freely give this recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Foote. I appreciate your comments there. I do have a clarification follow-up question for you. If I heard right, I think you mentioned that there was a commitment by the operator to finish the operations in the early winter months. I didn't see that in the COA that I'm looking at. What I see just states that they will do it continuously so long as all necessary permits are acquired prior to December 1. And if those are not acquired by December 1, they'll postpone construction drilling until May 1st. Can you elaborate on that? I haven't seen that commitment, and what does that mean, the early winter months in CPW's mind?
Yes, sorry, Commissioner Ackerman. I did slightly misspoke there. It was in my, I believe it was in the director recommendation. They did give early February timeline. Possibly it was also in my consultation summary that I submitted, where it stated that it was under our impression it would be early February at the latest.
Thank you, Mr. Foote. I appreciate that. And Chair Robbins, if I could redirect back to the operator for a follow-up.
Please.
Just along those same lines, this is probably directed at Mr. Kelly, but certainly whoever would like to answer. Can you address the estimated complete date for those initial 2 wells, and whether you're willing to also place that into the condition of approval as suggested by CPW? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner Ackerman. I just didn't catch one word. I think you said did you say the estimated completion date you were looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I'll clarify there because completions is a term of art. I just mean, between your pre-production activities and getting ready to turn this over to production, when would you estimate to be done if you were allowed to drill through, starting as soon as approval is given?
Yeah, apologies if I didn't communicate that well, but if we can refer to slide 13, we do have a proposed timing there whereby we could expeditiously start activities after approvals, which would take a drilling phase to around Christmas time, and then completion operations would occur into January. And we think this schedule that I presented allows us to finish up at the first or second week of February. And with the bulk of the 24-hour operations finishing up towards the end of January. Now this is our best estimate. We think it's a good estimate, but sometimes we need a few days variance on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kelly, and I'm sure you did make that clear during the presentation. I apologize for having missed it as I was flipping through documents related to the application. So thank you for reiterating that for me. The second follow-up to that part of the question is the condition of approval as proposed currently by CPW doesn't include an end date. Would you be amenable to including an end date of the first week in February to that condition of approval?
I think we could be done in the first week of February. These are our first 2 Mancos wells. We've drilled a lot of wells in the San Juan Basin, so we do have familiarity with the operations. I think I think some sort of buffer on that first week of February would be easier for us to agree to.
That was going to be my concern as well, is that if there is a downhole issue, something that could force delay, and you can't just stop right in the middle of the operations, that'd be worse for the environment, worse for the wildlife. Perhaps March 1st would be a better deadline, with the understanding that use all efforts possible to be out as soon as practical.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Pershaw, and thanks, Mr. Kelly. And I do certainly understand the dynamics of not being able to stop once you've started, and the difficulty and safety issues and many other myriad of things associated with that. What I'm looking for here is to make this application approvable for me, in order to demonstrate that we followed the mitigation hierarchy. I really do believe some form of avoidance needs to be a component here, and I think we accomplished that with a hard end date that we've demonstrated before, ends before the critical winter periods for wildlife in HPH. Understanding Mr. Foot's comments that this is mapped as HPH, but due to existing practices is of lower value in that HPH mapping. I think that I would be amenable to going a little further. And so if during this time period you can kind of take a look at what an acceptable date might be for you to discuss, I'd really appreciate it. Appreciate you answering those questions. That's all I have right now, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Ackerman, for leading us off. Additional questions for the panel? Commissioner Messner?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Kind of touched on it briefly, but I wonder if you could provide a little more detail on where you're at in the local government process, and whether, in your opinion, what's being proposed before us meets the standards associated with the local government review, particularly from a technology standpoint, from a setback standpoint, truck traffic, things like that. It's always a little bit hard for us to go before the local government, especially a local government like La Plata, where we don't see applications that they review as often, and to know what setback requirements they have, what things that may ultimately, should they approve an application, something different than us would require this process to start over, if it was a substantial change. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we've been meeting with La Plata County on and off, starting in, I believe, early November of last year. And some of the criteria they look at are the number of well pads in the section already. They do have a preference for expansion of well pads. And as far as setbacks, I think their setback is from the edge of the working pad surface, which is a little bit different than ECMC's setback, which is, I believe, a wellhead setback to the property line. That's the setback they're looking at, is the property line. And the existing pad out there is already up against the property line. And so we're expanding. The property line is to the west, and we're expanding to the north and east. And so they wanted to look at that. That was something that they brought up with us, and then we worked through that. And then we continue to communicate with them and answer questions. And as recently as this week, they gave us an update that they felt like they were almost done. And I don't want to put words in Mr. Caesar's mouth, because he's the person that did talk to them. But and I can tap him in here. But Ms. Hyde felt like that she would be able to approve this either this week or next week. But I defer that to Kyle to make sure I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is accurate. I discussed this with the county this week, and they had made some good progress on their review of the project. And quite frankly, we got hit with some big rain events down here, and it sort of delayed that review. But this week they said they were unaware of any issues at this point that would prohibit approval by the county. So we took that as a good indicator that it would likely be approved, but obviously we haven't seen a final decision from them. But they expect to be done with their review and make a decision this week or next week, the latest.
Okay. That's fair enough. I think anytime you go before the local government, go before us, before the local government, you run the risk of the local government making a significant change to an operation that would require you to start this process off, but that's your risk. And so I want to talk a little bit about produced water tanks. I find it pretty unusual that there's 6 produced water tanks on a site that has produced water takeaway. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I asked the question because tanks are a significant source of emissions. And while I note that you've committed to capture and combust the emissions associated with tanks on site, this is in proximity to RBUs, and so emissions controls and decreasing the number of tanks on site is certainly preferable. So I wonder if you could talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and thank you for it. The wells make a substantial amount of water in the first 120 days. And so really we need the tankage to store water as we transfer into the line. So we just can't transfer immediately into the line. So we need a little bit of storage to be able to transfer. After 120 days, these wells are online. The water production is very minimal. And so at that point, we would be over tanked. So really, we have 6 tanks for the very beginning of the operation.
So, but help me understand. So we're drilling 2 wells in one occupation, and then we're drilling some number of wells in the second occupation and some number of wells in a third occupation. Each occupation is, more or less 120 days apart. I'm still not following why 6 tanks is the right number of tanks.
We just don't want to be under tanked from a safety standpoint. And if you have an upset in the line or somebody has to shut down to change filters or something like that, we don't want to be in a position where we're trying to find a truck to move water off the pad instead of being able to transfer it down the line. So we just need some buffer to manage that early production of water volumes.
Okay.
And with multiple occupations, it resets. You come drill new wells, then you need that tankage again. We're more than happy to get rid of the tanks after so many days after our last well is placed online, if that helps.
I mean, it does. I mean, if you look at the studies and the emissions profiles of tanks, they are a significant source of emissions. And I think that ends up being an important consideration when in proximity to people. So, so I'll leave it to you to decide whether that's something you're willing to commit to or not. But I would appreciate you thinking about that. So, I don't think I have any other questions right now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the questions. Thanks for the answers. Further questions for the panel? All right, seeing no further questions, we move to the deliberation stage. Does anyone care to initiate their deliberations for the rest of us? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I would. I think from my questioning, it's been pretty clear. I have some concerns associated with this application as I was initially reading it, due to the kind of the new nature of just saying, hey, let's get on site and get started and ensure the animals don't come in there. It helps that CPW clarified that this is a very isolated parcel within HPH mapped area that has heavy oil and gas development already, that's near a road, that has very limited forage availability, and they don't expect animals to generally gravitate towards, is a mitigating standpoint. I think for me, it will depend on the language that we come up with the AAG. Generally, CPW recognizes February through the end of April being the most important winter months. Given those mitigating statements made by Mr. Foote, I think pushing back to a March 1st, while normally I wouldn't be amenable to that, likely would be for this application. And I think that that would help me understand that we are avoiding the most difficult winter months and making an effort towards avoidance there. And those are my thoughts for now, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. And I wonder, along those lines, Commissioner Ackerman, if we could even go a bit further to satisfy the concern, which is February 1st, unless and I'm just making this up, but AAG Boudreaux, hopefully you're listening, unless extenuating circumstances arise that require additional time. That's kind of what I heard from the applicant along those lines as well, is that they'll do what they can to try to get out of there by February 1st. So there might be a way to articulate that in a condition of approval as well, rather than just giving point blank to March 1st. I don't know what you think about that.
I like that very much, Mr. Chair, and also with the caveat, and I believe Mr. Kelly stated this as well, that the intent is to get out of there as soon as possible. If before, that's great. February 1st is the deadline, absent extenuating circumstances. I think that's a good path forward for me.
Mr. Pershala?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would just note that the estimated development plan as of now, and as we proposed on the slides, it was February 7th was the anticipated completion of all work on the pad during that season. And I wonder if that would be acceptable to the commissioners, if this is the way you're going to go, to adopt that development schedule as the period. And then with Chair Robbins, your suggestion of if there's extenuating circumstances that would require continuing, something to that effect.
Commissioner Ackerman?
I think that's reasonable, given that was the initial presentation, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Appreciate the deliberative thoughts on that front. Does other commissioners have deliberative thoughts? Commissioner Messner?
Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Ackerman bringing up the topic of wildlife and the timing stipulations and the multiple occupations, and also CPW providing a little more color as to kind of the character of what was happening on the ground, that helped develop some of their considerations in their recommendation for the director's recommendation. And this seems like an appropriate clarification in the condition of approval around wildlife. I also appreciate Mr. Kelly's explanation of the tanks. And I have some understanding of the necessity to ensure that there is some storage of produced water that is available, particularly in more of an exploratory type situation, even with a situation where there is produced water takeaway. I would like to see a voluntary reduction in those numbers of tanks, 120 days after the completion of the final occupation. That would take away the permanent production or produced water storage that would be required on site to the minimum amount necessary for standard production of produced water. To me, that shows avoidance of the potential emissions associated with storage of produced water in proximity to people. And I acknowledge that informed consent has been developed here, but that doesn't remove our requirement to ensure protection of public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. And so to me, that ends up being an important piece. The secondary element of that to me as well is the waiver that CPW provided for locating this facility within 500 feet of a ordinary high water mark, and the conditions associated with ensuring protection of that water and having that level of produced water permanently stored in tanks on site, I think would be unnecessary risk in considering the proximity of the site to the irrigation ditch. And so those are my thoughts, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. Further deliberative thoughts? AAG Bedreau, if you could visualize and share yourself with us. Why don't we do this? I had suggested in a previous hearing that I want to take a break between deliberative thoughts and potentially creating COAs. And so if everybody's comfortable with it, if there's no more deliberative thoughts, I think we've got two directions for some COA work. And I would like to take a 10-minute break. Let's return at noon, if that's okay with everybody, and then we'll see where we're at.
And Chair Robbins, I'd like to have an opportunity to discuss the proposed COAs with my client to make sure that we can make sure that they're workable in trying to achieve the goals that the commissioners have articulated.
Does 10 minutes work, or do you need?
I think 15 would be helpful. I felt rushed the last time we did this.
Yeah, okay. 12:05, we'll return, and if you're not ready, then we'll see where we go from there. Is that okay?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, we're back, and on the record in OGDP 241200306. Mr. Prashala, did you have sufficient time to discuss with your clients?
I did, yes. Thank you. I'd like to take the two proposed conditions of approval and explain kind of where we're at and what we think we can agree to here. And I think we can, what I'm going to propose, we think satisfies the commissioner's concerns. So I would like to take up Commissioner Mesner's COA first on the tanks. Our proposal, and let me put it in context. First, that these are dry gas wells. There's no condensate, no liquids in this gas production. The water contains minimal entrained gas, and that is all quantified in the Form 2B information that's been submitted. I mean, that's very unlike oil production wells, which has a much higher gas solution in the produced water. So we want to make that distinction to understand that what the produced water that we're talking about is already incredibly low on the emissions scale. What we can commit to is after 120 days following final completion operations, Catamount agrees to reduce tanks from 6 to 4. It cannot go below 4 tanks. And this is exploratory wells, first of all. So we're trying to be conservative here to make sure we don't run into an operational tankage issue here. But we are confident in the ability to go from 6 to 4 after final completions operations. And that's what we can agree to on that condition of approval. With respect to Commissioner Ackerman's concerns about wildlife, we hear you. We certainly take wildlife concerns very, very seriously here. Hence the extensive work that's been done with CPW. And where we're at on that, we do think that this initial operation period is a net benefit to this overall project, to wildlife getting in and out, shortening the overall operational period. As we heard from CPW, that this is really not prime high priority habitat area. So our proposal would be that we have the operational period up to February 7th with an opportunity to extend that period should there be operational necessities requiring an extension. And we could commit to providing that notice or request for an extension not less than 7 days before the February 7th date. That's what we've discussed, and we think that's a fair condition of approval that we think achieves Commissioner Ackerman's goals.
All right. I'll just call on both commissioners. So Commissioner Messner, do you want to provide any perspective comment on the suggested solution here?
Sure. I appreciate Mr. Prashala's thoughts. I will note that while it's important to consult with an operator in the development of best management practices, it's not required that an operator consent to a best management practice that's developed by this commission. But I think that the intent there is met. I think I would prefer the language to be upon reaching production phase, the operator will make best efforts to reduce the number of produced water tanks to the minimum tank count necessary for production operations. And the operator will document the tank count reduction via Form 4 sundry. To me, that's the cleanest best management practice that could, or condition of approval that could be developed. Does create some flexibility, but it does also include the term best efforts. And so that effort needs to be documented as to why you've reduced it to whatever the amount may be in that Form 4 sundry. I get a little uncomfortable with a significant number of tanks associated with proposed pipeline takeaway, only because that could default to truck takeaway pretty quickly, which would be, to me, a significant change to the application if that ever was to occur. And so to me, this captures that. Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
I appreciate the point that we don't have to negotiate with the operator, but we are trying to get to a result. I think your language is fine. Commissioner Ackerman, do you have any thoughts on the suggested language? And again, noting that it's our call at the end of the day, what we think is necessary to be protective.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think that accurately reflects what we talked about. I just wanted to clarify that in any case, the intent is to get out of there as soon as possible. I want to make sure that's worked in somewhere as well.
All right. AAG Boudreau, are you with us? Are you listening in? Again, I want to make sure you and staff had time to sort of think through these things. And now we've got some additional language from Commissioner Messner. Do you need some more time to be able to work your magic on conditions of approval, or you feel comfortable at this point?
Well, I just want to clarify what Mr. Prashala was saying about February 7th. So I can tell you what we came up with before Mr. Prashala's comments were operator will conclude the first drilling and completion operations and demobilize from the location no later than February 7th, 2026. Operator will employ best efforts to conclude those operations and demobilize as early as possible if upset conditions are encountered, but no later than March 1st, 2026. Operator will document any upset conditions that cause the delay via a Form 4 sundry. I wonder if that captures what Commissioner Ackerman was looking for, but also accounts for Mr. Prashala's timing.
Commissioner Ackerman?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you, AAG Boudreau. It largely does. I'm a little hesitant that it restricts the employment of best efforts to conclude operations and demobilize as early as possible, only when upset conditions are encountered. I think the intent was just to make a global statement that going to do the best they can to get out of there as soon as they can in any event, and then move into February 7th and extenuating circumstances. Does that make sense?
Okay, we could do operator will employ best efforts to conclude, excuse me. Operator will conclude the first occupation drilling and completion operations and demobilize from the location no later than February 7th, 2026, period. Operator will employ best efforts to conclude those operations and demobilize as early as possible, period. If upset conditions are encountered, operator will document any upset conditions that caused the delay via a Form 4 sundry. And if upset conditions are encountered, the operator will conclude those operations no later than March 1st, 2026.
That's amenable to me. Thanks, Mr. Chair. And again, I appreciate the operator working on these and recognize that we're not negotiating, but trying to find some common ground that's acceptable. So thank you.
Okay, so I think that one's taken care of. And then AAG Boudreau, did you have thoughts about Commissioner Messner's ideas on the area that he had concerns?
Yes, I thought the language that Commissioner Messner proposed captures what he was looking for. And so what I have is upon reaching production phase, the operator will make best efforts to reduce the number of produced water tanks to the minimum tank count necessary for production operations. Operator will document the tank count reduction via Form 4 sundry. Did I get that right, Commissioner Messner?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Further discussion from commissioners or further deliberation? All right, seeing none, I would move approval of the application with the two conditions of approval as enumerated by AAG Boudreau.
Well, quick clarifying question, Chairman Robbins. I think we still want the condition of approval. I think the commission might still want the condition of approval that's documented in the director's recommendation, which is for the first occupation at the Outpost 33-8 location, Catamount Energy Partners will complete the construction, drilling, and completion of 2 horizontal wells continuously if all necessary permits are acquired by December 1st, 2025. If the necessary permits are not acquired by December 1st, 2025, Catamount Energy Partners will postpone construction and drilling until May 1st, 2026.
Okay.
So we'd have 3 conditions of approval.
My motion is amended to include the 3 conditions of approval as enumerated by AAG Boudreau.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion? The only further discussion that I would enumerate, and Commissioner Ackerman, you alluded to this, but I think that the unique circumstances of this proposed site, as illustrated in particular by CPW Officer Foote, establish that the moving into the timing limitations is not precedential to other locations down in the San Juan Basin and in La Plata County or otherwise. And I think that's an important component for me in voting in the affirmative for this motion. Any further deliberation? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Pashala, for working with us. Thanks to CPW for the work here, and thank you to our staff for the good work that's gone into this as well.
Thank you all very much.
All right. That concludes the agenda items that were on the agenda for today. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. See you next week. Thanks, folks.